Hey everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Cyber Caffeine Chats, where we're taking a complex topic and breaking it down into smaller, easier to understand chunks. Well, as you might have noticed with the beautiful Manhattan skyline in the background, since our last episode, I've moved to a new country in a whole new continent as well. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be covering off something called the Vulnpocalypse. It's kind of hard to pronounce, but we're going to be digging into what it is, what sort of problems is it presenting for industries and organisations today, and also some advice in how we can address this and mitigate these problems as we move forward into the future. Now also, backed by popular demand, we're going to be having some conversations with some industry professionals in the cyberspace. So, without further ado, let's dive in and meet today's very special guest. Alright, well, hey Mr. Dan Brady, welcome to Cyber Caffeine Chats.
Thanks, good to be here.
Nice to have you on the show. Could you maybe just give us a quick intro about yourself, Dan, for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody, my name is Dan. I'm a solutions engineer at Trend AI.
Yeah.
Been working here for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was a consultant, also in cybersecurity. And before that, just worked in kind of generalized IT for a restaurant company. So probably about like 7 or 8 years, I'd say, in an overall cybersecurity experience.
Oh, fantastic. And sorry to put you on the spot, but could you give us a bit of a fun fact about yourself?
Yeah,
Maybe
fun fact.
Many fun facts.
Yeah. I could almost see my house from here. No, I'm joking. I grew up, so we're in Central Park right now, and I grew up in Midtown East, so yeah. Can kind of, familiar territory.
Beautiful Central Park. It's pretty much the only place in Manhattan that it's a bit quiet. We haven't got sirens going on and things like that. So yeah, or maybe we'll get some a little bit later. Okay, so I think what we really want to talk today about, Dan, is the concept of something called the Vulnpocalypse. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but yeah, what is this? What is the Vulnpocalypse? What are we referring to?
Yeah, so essentially what it is that the agentic AI era, the large language model era, has created a new risk to organizations in the form of exploitable vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. So as potent as a tool that, for searching databases and searching knowledge bases as these AI tools are, they are just as good for that purpose for threat actors, because a lot of threat actor work is really research, it's finding vulnerabilities, like researching targets, things of that nature. So as you can imagine, it's really accelerated there.
Or even just AI bots, agentic bots wanting to do their own vulnerability research, right?
Yeah.
We've seen recently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. True.
So I think, definitely, AI is accelerating this. It's making the problem bigger, but even before the boom of Gen AI, it was already a problem, right? Vulnerabilities were already like a hard thing to solve for organizations, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the issues that people face with that, you reckon?
Yeah, so I think first, like, inventory is maybe like the first one. Like, if customers are using like sort of traditional EDR tools rather than moving more into like the XDR and monitoring space, a lot of those like platform approach tools will have like a section dedicated to vulnerabilities that they're detecting on machines or devices or any type of digital asset. But yeah, so I would say getting an inventory of everything is and a centralized way to view them. Like in your in any security platform that's your main tool, you should have a page you can go to see these big lists of vulnerabilities.
The state of a nation, and then I guess just overlaying things. And I think obviously a lot of companies, it's difficult these days, right? There's limited time, limited resources, limited money, particularly in larger organizations. It takes a while to roll out a patch, right? So if a critical CVE comes in on a Friday night, we've got tens of thousands of servers. It's not trivial, right, to go and fix that. It takes time.
And the time in which, and again, another sort of element of Vulnpocalypse, you could say, is that the release of the disclosure of the vulnerability and attackers exploiting it, that window seems to be tightening. So in other words,
we've got less and less
it's the
time to fix it, right?
It doesn't stay secret for too long anymore. These get published, and we're seeing them get exploited. These vulnerabilities CVEs get exploited in the wild much quicker.
So we know it has been a problem. The problem's getting bigger. Effectively, what do we do about it, right? How can we start to be a bit smarter with this? I think one way of looking at this is taking a risk view, right, Dan? How do you think we can kind of overlay risk onto this problem?
Yeah, well, we talked about like inventorying vulnerabilities, and so yeah, so let's assume that step is done. You have this big list of vulnerabilities. Next, we have to start prioritizing, which we do a trend by, of course, like trying to prioritize vulnerabilities, and that's always been the game, and that was the game before AI as well, and kind of our philosophy about cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Vulnerabilities can just kind of be almost a technicality, and some of them, like if they're not really practically like exploitable, just due to the nature or how you would have to go about doing it and gaining access to certain machines in a certain manner. But yeah, I would say that the game hasn't changed too much in the sense that it's about prioritizing the CVEs that are most likely to be exploited, and having a tool that allows you to.
And I think that's one layer. Like, are they globally exploitable? Are they actually exploitable, or just a sort of a concept, right? What's the impact scope? How many machines in our environment are actually vulnerable to this thing? Have we got prevention rules in place? Have we got controls that might be able to stop this attack on an unpatched system? And then finally, are we actually seeing any attacks? Is anybody actually trying to exploit this? All those things is going to change that risk view and probably change our approach to what we're going to do, right?
Yeah, and also integrating threat intelligence feeds is a good one as well, especially like if you have a way of ingesting like programmatized like CSV format or like sticks or like taxi feeds, something like that, being able to ingest that threat data and then turn that into lists of banned objects, lists of banned file hashes, sender addresses, maybe a sender address or domains that are associated with threat actors. This can all be included in programmatized threat intelligence data. I think that's being able to, especially if it's industry specific. So if you're like healthcare, hospital, if you're like finance, if you're something like, these threat actors tend to use those as criteria for targeting people. So often there's often there's a threat intel feed that's probably unique to your industry, maybe your organizational size, region. I would always recommend people check those out because
all right, so feed in risk, feed in threat intelligence, and then I think particularly it's the sort of the then what moment. Like, it's just fair enough, we know what the state of the nation is, but how are we going to address it, right? Is it for a preventive control? Is it for a patch? And how do we do that in the quickest way possible, right? Using automation or whatever tools we've got available, basically.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's prioritize inventory, prioritize, addressing it as quick as you can, and also just creating deliverables. Rather than things as simple as like, do we send out a bi-weekly report, or do we have a tool that can generate a report or a CSV of the vulnerabilities in our environment? Are we attaching that to some type of deliverable, like, are we creating a ticket, or is it sitting in an email inbox somewhere? Like, that's a big one. If you have like a ticketing system, ServiceNow, things of that nature, trying to integrate your security platform into generate anything where there's a workflow attached to it, where there's something you can track, something you can hold somebody accountable for,
make it actionable, basically.
All
right, well, look, I think that's some good insights there. Thanks for that chat there, Dan. Shall we have a look at what this looks like in the sort of Trend Vision 1 platform?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Happy to.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so before we dive into the Vision 1 console, let's have a think about what happens in the timeline of each vulnerability. Well, right at the start, we know something has been identified. So whether that's by a security researcher or someone else, we've realized there's a problem, of a flaw in a piece of software or operating system. And then obviously the end goal is we want to get those systems patched, so the problem's fixed. But a lot of things might happen in between, right? Between those spaces. So if we think about, first of all, the patch itself, once something's been identified, it's going to have to be disclosed to the vendor. So the actual problem where the vulnerability lies, again, hopefully that's done in a responsible fashion, but there are cases where it's not as well. And then eventually that vendor is going to release a patch so that everybody that's running that software can go and fix the problem. They can get that done. But there may be other things that happen during this timeline. So from an attacker's point of view, it may be that an exploit is generated, So they turn, that potential vulnerability or that potential problem into something that can be launched as an attack on customers. And then, unfortunately, we may see attacks in the wild. And this is where, the risk is increased and we're getting closer and closer towards a problem, right, for that particular vulnerability as that rises up. Now, if we think about it from the defender's point of view, we may actually put a preventative control in place. So I'll put prevention. So that may be, not necessarily the patch, but it might be an IPS signature, it might be a virtual patch, some way of stopping that attack as it comes in. If we think about it from a risk perspective, all the way from when the vulnerability is identified to when that prevention or that patch is in place, all this time we are at risk for this particular vulnerability. So it's a problem that we need to fix in one way or another. And unfortunately, that time can be quite a lot for a lot of companies because they're unable to put that fix in place or unable to get that patch rolled out. It could take quite a long time in some larger organizations. But yeah, definitely, if we're able to sort of do this earlier, so if we're able to get this prevention earlier in the cycle, definitely, this can sort of protect us. So protection available. So we can get that in earlier during that cycle, then we're going to close that risk down and we're going to solve the problem quicker here. And I think one of the problems we're seeing in the industry, if we think about the amount of vulnerabilities discovered over the course of time, obviously this is increasing at the moment, and we'll talk more about that. So it's one thing dealing with one particular vulnerability, but think about having to deal with hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of those at any one time. This is the problem that we're looking to sort of address at the moment. So with that, let's dive into the Trend Vision One console. Let's see how we might address some of these problems moving forward. Okay, so let's have a deeper look at the Vision One console and how we can start to visualize our various concepts around risk and vulnerabilities. Well, first of all, we've got what we call the executive dashboard or cyber risk overview. So this is where we can see at an organization level what is our overall risk for a particular company. Is it trending upwards? Is it trending downwards? We can compare ourselves to various peers or similar companies in the industry. We can look at how is the risk broken down across different attack surfaces, so across things like devices, internet-facing assets, accounts, etc. But obviously, also in each of those attack surfaces, we've got particular areas of risk that's contributing towards that score. And as you can see, vulnerabilities in particular are a big portion of this, right? They're particularly related to the exposure side of risk. Sure, there's a lot of other factors going into that, but it's definitely something that we need to consider and something that we can dig in a little bit deeper here. If we go a layer a little bit down, we can take a look at specifically around those vulnerabilities, what is actually happening. If I scroll down here, we can see a couple of metrics around, sort of percentages, amounts of different assets that we've got that contain vulnerabilities, patch management, legacy operating systems, things like that. But mainly what we can detect down here is across, first of all, our internal assets. Here's a list of all the top vulnerabilities that might be relevant to our organization. And, it's one thing that we can list these, we can rank them by, sort of vulnerability impact score to see which ones are the most important. But we can also see overlays of, first of all, impact scope. So, how many actual devices in our environment are these things affecting? We've got some machines down here where it's impacting 17 different hosts. That's obviously going to have a bigger impact and going to make us, perhaps take a different direction with managing our risk compared to one that's got fewer amounts of impact in terms of our assets. The second one, prevention rules. So do we have any virtual patches or any actual protections that can automatically stop this vulnerability from being exploited. Again, if we do, if we can put those in place automatically, it's probably going to change the way we address how to deal with these things on a day-to-day basis. And finally, exploit attempts. Are we actually seeing any active attacks within our environment? If we are, that's going to really increase the risk level and really draw our attention to something that we want to deal with there. You can also see some of these vulnerabilities have been identified or discovered by the Trend Zero Day Initiative, or ZDI, and we'll talk more on this a little bit later. But that's definitely something that's interesting and unique to the platform there as well. Moving on to that ability to sort of go and protect and actually do something about these vulnerabilities once that we've understood what our situation is. First of all, from a network level, we can see here, again, about 77 highly exploitable CVEs that we detected throughout the environment. Now, most of those, about 58, have been fully patched using our network appliances. Some of them have been partially patched, but we've got 6 of those with no patches pushed out, even though we've got those protections available. So very quickly, we can see what those 6 are. If I filter on that, we can go and select all of those, and we can go and deploy that to our profiles in a single click. So very easy to go and push this across that network attack surface if that's how we want to protect against these particular threats and vulnerabilities. The other side that we can do this is around the endpoints. We do have agents and sort of software deployed on our servers, on our workloads. We can also automatically push for protection based on that. So if I open this particular machine over here, you can see that we've got a bunch of different protection modules here, but if we go to IPS, we've actually deployed 21 rules. So these are 21 different IPS signatures that we've basically scanned this machine. We've found that it's vulnerable to these attacks, and we've automatically pushed these signatures out. So that's been done by something called a recommendation scan. And of course, if a customer is going to go and patch that down the line, we can remove this protection. We don't need it anymore. We can free up resources on the machine. But this is a great way in which we can get a security outcome, but also a resource outcome, right, where we're finding a balance between the operational side and the security as well. And then finally, just from a sort of threat intelligence angle, there's another way that we could sort of look at the vulnerabilities in our environment. So again, we've got the whole universe of CVEs that we're aware of here, a couple of 100,000. Again, how many of those do we actually have an exploit available for? It's a lot. The number is a lot less there, but the risk is obviously higher. How many of those are we actually seeing actively exploited in the wild? And again, the risk lever increases as we go looking at these particular things. Again, for each of these, we can see various different factors in terms of the CVSS score, what's the affected vendor, the products, again, bit of description and dates around that. Or indeed, we could go and have a look at the items that have been discovered via the Trend Zero Day Initiative. So a lot of these that have come in here have not yet been publicly disclosed. So we're aware of those. We're sort of we're able to protect against them, and we've got that great threat intel. And customers who've got the Trend products installed can get protection up to 90 days ahead of an actual patch in this case. So look, just to summarize, vulnerabilities are a big problem. They're getting more and more of a problem these days with the advancement of AI and all the technology that we're working with today. What we need to do is take a very focused look at how do we address these, which ones do we address first. Instead of trying to boil the ocean and solve all the problems in the universe, let's go and address the ones that are presenting the highest risk. And let's do that in a way that we're reducing the manual effort. Let's use automation, let's use AI, let's focus on pushing these protections out without burning too much energy for the organization. All right, well, thanks for watching that, everybody. Hopefully you found that useful and you got some insights there. Well, stay tuned next time, and we'll see you again on Cyber Caffeine Chats. Cheers, Dan.
Thanks for having me.